Hi guys, thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel again. I'm so happy to be back with another video. I wanted to do another conversational kind of video just to make it more interesting, learn from other people, and kind of have a chit chat as well. So I have my friend Chinelo here with me today. Thank you so much for joining me. So Chinelo is a pharmacist as well in Ontario, and we basically done our PEBC exams together. So for people who don't know what PBC is, I'm sure most of you should know, because if you're subscribed to my channel, I'm sure you know who PBC are. It's the Pharmacy Examining Board of Canada, and basically all international pharmacy graduates have to do a couple of exams, and we happened to luckily do it together a few years ago and have been friends ever since. So yeah, Chinelo is a pharmacist, and she has so many other passions and interesting things that she's doing. So can you tell us a bit about what you're doing and what you like doing and stuff aside from pharmacy?
Sure. Very excited to be here with you, Oren. It's been way too long, by the way. Okay, so like you said, my name is Chinelo. I'm currently a retail pharmacist or community pharmacist, whatever you want to call it. I live in Ottawa, in Ontario, and I'm basically just doing what pharmacists do. But of recent, I found myself becoming more interested in the IT industry as related to healthcare. So that's where my extra passions are right now. I'm currently following that actually by getting a master's degree from the University of Waterloo. But yeah, I'm also a new mom. That's the newest addition to my title.
And that's so exciting. I think that it's one thing that I've recently become passionate about is seeing other pharmacists, and it's inspiring, it's inspirational for me to see other pharmacists who are not just doing pharmacy things. So one of the things I talk about on my YouTube channel a lot is just making sure that we're not like stuck, like we don't think, oh, because I'm a pharmacist, I can't do other things. So really interesting that you're doing that. And I think that at the end, we'll talk about how you can get in touch with Chinelo if you need to, just to ask her questions or give you tips and stuff. So today we just wanted to focus in more on getting a job as an international pharmacy graduate. What are the challenges? How difficult was it? What our journeys were like and things like that. So for you, like what was I know you were already living in Canada before you done the PBCs. So in that time, were you doing anything in the pharmacy to kind of get experience and make connections?
Yeah, actually. So I moved to Canada in December 2017, and I did the first exams in July 2018. So between that time, December and July, I kind of like had to ask myself questions. So I really want to do pharmacy. I went back and forth with that for a little bit, and then I decided I wanted to actually do that. So I decided to volunteer at a pharmacy. So it didn't start off as volunteering. I actually wanted to get a job as a pharmacy assistant just because I wanted to stay in that space, right? So I went to get this job, but the owner of the pharmacy, it was a small independent pharmacy. He was like, well, you have no experience. You have to volunteer for a few weeks. And then if you meet the expectations, then we put you on the payroll. I was like, okay, well, that's fine. I can do that. But bearing in mind that at the same time, I was applying to other sorts of jobs. I actually was interviewing for like a customer care position with a big company. They were offering something very good, but I really wanted to learn about pharmacy practice in Ontario. So I took the volunteering, position.
So one of the big questions I always get, people always say, oh, can I be a pharmacy assistant? Like if I'm doing my exams. As a pharmacy assistant, did you have to do any qualifications? Was there any like prerequisites, anything you needed to do to get that job?
No, absolutely not. So no, you can literally walk into a pharmacy and become a pharmacy assistant. The only thing though would be, I think of late, because of the influx of international pharmacy graduates to the country, and also the fact that some schools are beginning to offer pharmacy assistant courses, it might not be as easy for you to just walk in there and get a pharmacy assistant job, because it's also a very high pressure job. You have to actually have knowledge of what you're doing. People might be less likely to give you that job if you don't volunteer and learn about the job. Yeah, so there's no barrier to it. You can actually get the job, but you actually have to ramp yourself up quickly, so to speak, so that you just know what you're doing when you're on the job. Yeah.
I think that varies because like in the UK, you can't just walk in and be a pharmacy assistant. You have to do certain training and things like that. And the other thing as well, like adding to what you said, in Canada, in retail, I don't know whether it's in other countries, but they don't give you training. Even as a pharmacist, you kind of just go in and on your second shift, you're meant to, or first shift, you're meant to just get on with it. So if you go in and you don't know the systems, you don't know like even things like confidentiality and information, protecting patients' information, if you have no idea, it might be quite challenging. So volunteering is quite is quite good and stuff. You mentioned having applying for customer service, another customer service job, right? Would that have been full-time if you'd done that?
Yeah, it was going to be a full-time job actually, and it was for such a big company that it was a little difficult for me to make the decision not to take the job, because I don't know if many people know, but like working as a pharmacy assistant doesn't pay the best, if I might put it lightly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I had to make a decision at that point as to what I wanted to do, and I acknowledge the privilege there is. I had to make that decision. Obviously, I had a little support system, so I was able to, like, decide to go volunteer.
So I guess you were doing your pharmacy assistant job whilst you were doing the exams and all that kind of stuff, which is great. How long did it take from the time that you got your license? How long did it take to find a job as a pharmacist?
So that's the very interesting thing. I actually did my first shift as a pharmacist on the day I got licensed. And that's just because I was volunteering at like this pharmacy after I had done my case, which is the last step in the licensing process. I just went to volunteer somewhere. I was like, I need to keep myself busy. And I was just working there, and then the lady knew I was waiting for my license. And then this morning I was just working, I was going to work, and then I got the email. I was like, your license, we're going to send you this in the mail. And then I got to the pharmacy and I told the lady, oh, well, I just got my license. And she was like, oh, great, I need to go for a funeral, take my shift. Which was so weird because I wasn't ready to do
that day.
No, exactly. I have no idea. But yeah, I mean, she just threw me right into the deep end. But I guess that wasn't my first stable job. That was just my first shift as a pharmacist. So between licensure and my first stable job, I think it was about 2 weeks. Which I think is pretty fast, and I would have to credit that to networking.
With that, so like when you say stable job, like I'm thinking, full-time, benefits, paid benefits, all that kind of stuff. Like, did you go from licensure into that in 2 weeks, or was there kind of like, so what was was it like a couple of shifts here and there? Was it regular shifts? Was it part-time, full-time? What was it like?
So between my licensure and this job that I call the stable job, I actually did get some shifts where I, just did this shifts here and there for like relief pharmacies. I just did relief shifts basically. Then this stable job, I was working full-time, but it was a part-time position, which is very, very common if you would work in Toronto or in the GTA. So yes, I was basically working full-time hours, but I was hired as part-time staff. But it was a stable job in that's the best.
So it was almost like you're guaranteed part-time, but you were actually doing like full-time, like hours. Yeah. So one of the things that people ask me a lot is, especially people who, because I find a lot of the pharmacists who come to Canada are pharmacists in another country. So they're already licensed somewhere else, whether it's India, Nigeria, England, America, wherever, and then they come to Canada. So there is that kind of like mindset of like, I'm already a pharmacist somewhere. I think I had that as well initially. Like, why am I doing this? Like, why do I have to wait for a job? So is it easy to get a job? I personally didn't find it easy to get a job, like a full-time stable job. And I had to do the same as Chinelo. I had to do shifts here and there. I had to work with some agencies. I had to do some shifts that were like really like low, bad pay, some really pharmacies. But then people who are coming, some people are like, they don't want to do that. I actually have a friend who moved back to the UK because he was like, I'm not doing this because I don't want to, why should I go and work for so-and-so dollars an hour? Or why should I work in a rubbish pharmacy? Like, how do you like balance that with, I want to get a full-time job, I don't want to have to do all these crap jobs in between, but I don't want to sit at home? Like, is it something we all have to go through? Or
yeah, I think that's a dilemma everyone would find themselves in, mostly immigrant pharmacists. And like you said, it might be very difficult if you've come from like an already established career, right? It's difficult to want to take those kind of jobs. However, I think that when you move to a new environment, there's a transition period where like, things might not be optimum, but you just have to get by somehow, and then just work towards what your actual vision is. The second thing I would say is, I think that when a lot of people move to Canada, a lot of people focus on a particular city. and everyone wants to work there. So what happened when the
Everyone's in Toronto.
supply exactly.
Or they want to be in, like, I don't know, Vancouver or something. Like everyone
Yeah.
wants to be in this, yeah, that's true.
Exactly. So like when the supply exceeds the demand, then people are going to capitalize on that imbalance, and then you're gonna have people who are going to take advantage of you and offer you wages that are very dishonorable or honorable, whatever that is, and it is what it is. But I would say if you move to Canada, definitely explore moving to other cities.
Yeah.
For me, for instance, even living in Toronto and moving from Toronto to Ottawa, I could tell there was a very, very big difference. I could tell that I could tell, like, basically speaking, my wages increased, just by moving to Ottawa, which isn't very far from Toronto. And, it's easier to get like a full-time job, in a very short time. So I'd say if the environment isn't working for you, maybe just change environment and see.
Yeah.
How
And obviously, like, we know that things like that are they're not always easy for everyone, because some people may already have, like, I know people who come married and maybe their husband has a job in Toronto and stuff. But I get this question all the time, like, is pharmacy oversaturated? Is it true that there's too many pharmacist positions? And what you said is important, because of the fact that there are more people living in the GTA. So GTA is the Greater Toronto area. There's more people living here, I guess. If there's like so many pharmacists and everybody needs a job, there are going to be people who take advantage of that and maybe pay less wages than others. So, and I always I'm sure you get emails of like pharmacist jobs in different places. Some of the places are like super high, like, wow, like, I wish I had the boldness to move to like Thunder Bay or places that are like $60, $70, $80 an hour, like, places like Nunavut. If you like the cold, maybe Nunavut is a nice place. But yeah, like, it's definitely important to, I guess, venture out, because there's always work, right, for pharmacists.
Yeah. And venturing out sometimes doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be a permanent move for you, depending on what kind of position you're willing to take. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because I know one of the job offers that I received before I even got my stable job was an offer to go to it was going to be far into Northern Ontario, but it was going to be 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out. So they were going to fly me every 2 weeks to work then, and they were going to pay me a lot of money, and they were going to cover my accommodation, all of that. I didn't take the job at the time because it didn't work for my family. It didn't work for my family, arrangements. But if I was in a different position, then I would definitely consider that, because I would see that that's an adventure. I'm still coming back to Toronto, right? But I just get to this area and get all this money and just have the best of both worlds. So like, definitely explore and see what your options are.
Sometimes I think one of the things that I want people to take out from this video is the fact that, as you said, it's not a permanent situation. So, because when we were, I'm sure you felt the same as well. Like, when I was in that situation, doing all these like crappy shifts, working in like retail pharmacies that I didn't really like working in, it was very like, oh my God, am I ever gonna get? But then I don't know whether you found this, like, after some time, I'm finding that more employers are actually looking at my resume. So like, when I first licensed, I would apply to loads of jobs, but wouldn't even get an interview. Like, I wouldn't get anyone contact me back. And it's all because that Canadian experience, I feel like, is such a big thing for them here. And for me, and probably other pharmacists who come from other countries, you think, well, I have so many years experience in my country. Why do you not value that? But actually, they class their experience as like important, like it's vital, regardless of how many years you've had in other countries. But did you find that after some time you were getting more, attraction from employers and, getting interviews, or at least getting some interaction from agencies, employers, and so on and so forth?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think at a certain point you start declining shifts and you start asking some agencies not to contact you anymore, especially when you like realize how much you've been shortchanged. So yeah, that definitely happens. Like you said, Canadian experience is very important. So as soon as you get that on your resume, then it's easier for you to like break into. And I think that cuts across all the jobs. When you come to Canada, most of the jobs will want you to have like Canadian experience. And that was one of the things that actually made me want to, volunteer at the pharmacy, work as a pharmacy assistant, because I knew I could put that on my resume and say, hey, look, I know how pharmacy works in this country. So I'm ready to, be a pharmacist, with you. So yeah, it's a definitely important thing too.
Yeah. 2 or 3 last questions. So what do you think were the challenges with finding like a full-time position? So after some time, you did get a full-time position. The same with myself as well. I got a full-time position after probably a couple of months, really. So what were the challenges aside from the fact that, in the first instances, the money was rubbish, like initially? Were there any other things that you kind of faced, like in terms of the work environment, did they treat you differently because you were new in terms of in Canada and pharmacy experience? Was there treatment like that or anything else?
Well, yeah, I think that's a very, very, very important point to bring up. I think that before you accept any kind of position, try to fill out that pharmacy and fill out what kind of environment you're getting yourself into, because I've definitely been on both sides of the coin. Unfortunately for me, my stable position was with an amazing pharmacy. My associate was the best manager I've had to date. He's like the best thing ever. But I've also been in pharmacies that were, let's say, toxic a little bit, where like people don't really have the patience or the emotional intelligence to understand, where you're coming from or where you're facing challenges, where someone who should be managing you isn't really looking to help you succeed, in my opinion, but looking to point out, the deficits in your, in your skill set or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And I think that as an immigrant pharmacist, it's even more glaring to us, because there's so many things that you need to bring yourself up to speed with. It's like a cultural difference. It's so many different things. It's like understanding how the insurance works. It's just understanding so many different things, and it takes time for you to build that confidence and build that skill set to actually be comfortable. So that's definitely a barrier. And I think that when people want to employ you, they want to employ you as someone who is already fully settled with everything.
Yeah.
But well, you've seen my resume. You've seen that I just became a pharmacist like 2 months ago, right? You can't expect me to be like a pharmacist who's been licensed for 10 years. So that's there. The other thing I would mention is that there aren't a lot of people, especially in the GTA, for instance, there aren't a lot of pharmacists who are hiring full-time pharmacists. So you might go to a pharmacy and they already have like 2 full-time pharmacists, and then they have several other part-time pharmacists.
Yeah.
So before that full-time position becomes open, you're going to have to wait a little bit, and there's already a queue, right? There's already other part-time pharmacists who were there before you, who would be filling that position before you. Yeah. So it's all of these things. It's like I said, it's that imbalance between demand and supply. So
yeah.
It will take some time.
That's quite common. I think you find it's quite common that a lot of pharmacists are actually working multiple part-time roles to make up their full-time hours. I found as well, just even like in hospital sector, it seems as though they don't hire full-time upfront.
Right.
So, sorry, not full-time, they don't hire permanent upfront. They do like either like temporary. A lot of the jobs that I see, that hospital jobs, are temporary. A lot of the community retail ones that are not desperate are normally part-time, and then people go on to, or they hire casual and then they go on to like permanent later. So do you feel like the PACE, the exam, that process, do you think it prepared you for your first shift as a pharmacist? Like, I know that you obviously done some volunteering, so you had a bit of a head start, but I can answer the question because I didn't have any volunteering. I didn't have any but for you, as someone who did volunteer, I think this would be good for people who might find themselves debating whether they should volunteer or not. I didn't volunteer prior. I just done PACE, and then I started my first shift. I would say that PACE and everything did not prepare me for my first shift properly. How about you? Because you volunteered, so do you think it prepared you?
No, so the process itself, I don't think it prepares you for the clinical aspect of things, but not on the day-to-day, things that you have to deal with working in a pharmacy. Being a pharmacy assistant, it did help me to an extent, but I also know that I had to put in extra work. I wasn't just an assistant who was going to work and doing my job every day. I had to learn things and go back to read the regulations behind what I was doing. So I kind of assumed the role of a pharmacist, even though I was a pharmacy assistant. In my head, obviously not like in the pharmacy, but in my head. like there's a whole lot of work that you need to do, things that you need to prepare yourself on before you can actually be ready for your first shift. And this is what I tell everyone who is trying to get licensed. The exams are just one thing. Once you're done with those exams and you're actually thrown into your first shift, then you're actually going to see that there's a lot of deficiency that needs to be covered. So focus on that while you're getting ready to be a pharmacist.
To maximize that time. The last thing I wanted to touch on is networking. So it's something that I found that I underestimated a lot. And I think 2020 really gave us the opportunity to focus on online networking, because I've always thought networking was going to conferences, going to events, going to like speaking engagements and things like that. But actually we couldn't do any of that last year. So we were forced to network online. And I think LinkedIn, for me, LinkedIn was a great place to network online. And I feel like maybe it was just me, but in England, I don't think networking on places like LinkedIn or looking for jobs on places like LinkedIn it wasn't really emphasized as important. But did you find that helped you? Were you doing that before you came to Canada or before you became a pharmacist? Did that change in any way when you were looking for a job? And did it help you find any jobs or potential employers?
So networking is definitely a big thing in Canada. It's definitely very, very important. But when I started looking for my jobs, I wasn't like networking on LinkedIn for those jobs. I mean, I think in retrospect, I should have done that a little bit more. But networking can take several forms. So people shouldn't just concentrate on networking online or meeting people at events. So for instance, when you're a pharmacy assistant and you're volunteering somewhere, that's a form of networking. You can be an impressionable pharmacy assistant and you can be a pharmacist in that location. Why not when you're done with your exams, right? Because that happened for me a lot. All the places where I worked as an assistant, I eventually worked there as a pharmacist. So that was my own networking. And I found that those associates were able to refer me to other associates who were looking for a pharmacist. So that's also networking. So don't wait till you have the opportunity to be in a room full of highly placed people. Use the resources you have around you to network and look for what you're looking for.
I think that's very important. I definitely underestimated that. Even just being able to talk to, if I had another pharmacist working at a nearby store, just become friendly with them. And because as you said, you never know who could connect you with, whoever. The person I'd done my PACE with, so the associate I did my PACE with, I've still kept a good relationship with her because sometimes she's my reference for certain jobs. So that's really important as well. What advice would you give to any international pharmacy graduates who are kind of like, I want to come to Canada, or maybe they're already here and they're looking for a job and they're finding it quite challenging? What would you say your main piece of advice would be?
The main piece of advice would be take your time. There's always going to be that period where it feels like the world is crashing down, it's not working out, and all of that. But you have to persevere. It's only going to be for a very short time. And when you finally get that job, you're going to see that it was only for a short time. The other thing is don't just focus on the traditional roles pharmacists have. Try to think outside the box. See what else you can do for yourself. You'll be surprised how many more fulfilling careers there are. Just don't box yourself in community pharmacy, hospital pharmacy, and all of that. There's many other roles that you can explore as well.
Thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate your time, Chinelo. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your afternoon. How can people reach out to you? If they want to network with you, they want to connect with you, they want to find out more about your IT and pharmacy skills, how can they reach you?
You can network with me on LinkedIn. It's Chinelo Uddoh. It's just my name. You probably put the information out there for them.
Yes.
I have an Instagram page. It's held _plus_tech. It's a new page where it's basically talking about healthcare professionals, especially pharmacists who want to transition into the IT industry. So that's how you can reach me.
I will put all the information in the description box and in the boxes below here. But thank you guys so much. I really hope you found the video helpful. And if you're on that journey looking for a new job as a new pharmacist, just make sure you keep going. It will come very soon. Take care. Take care.